Thank you so much for joining today. I know Katie Ray is going to be on with us. We're having a little bit of technical problems, so be patient. And as we get that worked out, we're going to be talking about all kinds of things community and what actually community means. So I'm really excited to have her on. I may need to just, email her or have her in the group answering questions within the comments. That may work too. So let's give it just a minute, and I'm going to replay the beginning so I can work with her to get on here. So give me just a moment. Thank you. All right, she's going to try and join by her phone here. This happens when you go live, and it happens when you try and work with new technology that one may or may not be familiar with, or even have attempted to try that again. So we're going to work on this. We're going to see what we had. And if you have any comments or you're looking for anything, please put your comments in. If you have any questions about what we're doing at this time, I will tell you that Katie is the head of community for metadata. And we're real excited to hear, because this is a new position and a new way of looking at not only HR and employees and access and teamwork and collaboration, but how do we create a community within organizations that allow people to really come together? There she is. I'm glad she's on here. So let's welcome Katie Ray, head of community with metadata.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Afternoon.
Oh my goodness, this day is flying by. And I just want to say, I am so sorry, everyone. My computer, if you guys could all only see the messaging I had sent to Paula, I was like, I'm trying to log in. It's not letting me log in. I don't know what to do. Oh my goodness. And this started 10 minutes ago. So normally I'm a very, on-time person. So I'm very, very, very sorry about that. But I am excited for us to chat today.
Yeah. And boy, I do know you're very on time, very accountable, that, you are an amazing person. And I'm really, really excited to hear about what you're doing. So
absolutely.
Talk about all things community. When we talk about community, what does that mean to you?
So for me, oftentimes I describe it as big C and little c. So big C community is the business of having a community to help support certain initiatives. Little c community to me is really about relationships. It's all about fellowship, meeting people, connecting with them, helping encourage each other, feeling like you have a tribe to come to whenever you have questions, and everything in between. So it's been so encouraging to see such a shift in so many businesses and how they're actually looking at it, because in the past it's been all about how can this audience almost make the most money for us. And where it's really cool is that's not really flying anymore. A lot of people are saying, no, that's not how community works. And so now they're really looking towards the relational aspect, which is awesome.
Which, and from what I'm hearing, if we talk about the side A, side B, that I talk about in my book, side A would be those skills like networking and collaboration and team building, where side B is the community, where it's all things that are business related, but really making it relational.
Yeah, exactly. And what I think is so cool with community as well is it's not just something a company can do for their customers or for an industry, but it's also what you can do inside of your own organization to make it a stronger culture for everyone that's there.
So give me an example. First of all, you're working at metadata, right?
Yep. Yes,
so
ma'am.
Tell me a little bit about that first.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, it's just been a complete dream come true. It is one of the coolest organizations I've ever been with. I'm constantly surprised and encouraged and challenged by everyone on the team. And it's only the start of week 3, which is amazing. They are a marketing software. And if you haven't checked them out, definitely go do. They have like a non-gated demo on their website. They're very open. And honestly, that's one of the things that actually drew me to them was they just want the best for their customers and prospects. And hopefully it's them. And if not, hopefully they can point them in the right direction. And I love that. And so right now we're actually launching a community this week. So it's been a pretty quick turnaround time. But I was just talking with Clara over at Talkbase this morning. It's so unique because I don't feel the pressures of a traditional community launch of having to have everything ready to go all at once. And instead, this community has really shifted in how I've thought about community in the sense that it's really for the customers and for everyone in demand gen marketing, and it's by them, which is really cool. And I'll give you a little insight into what I mean by this is we're actually building our community core values with feedback from people in the community, which is really stinking cool. You don't always get that. So it's really going to be by our members for our members, which is cool.
That is awesome. That is really, really, and this is your first kickoff for
Yes.
it's amazing. You don't have to have all the processes in place, everything
Yep.
in place. You're kind of letting it gel and come together
Yeah.
as the community wants it to.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. I was scrolling on LinkedIn this morning, as we all do on Monday mornings. And I saw an article and it was why you have to have a community strategy at launch. And while we have a strategy, it's very non traditional. And I love that because we get to build it as we're going, which can stress some people out. But by having that flexibility, instead, we're actually able to build it to where our members need it to be going instead of where we think it should,
Yeah.
which I think is really powerful.
And when you're speaking of your members, you're speaking of not only your clients, but people who are also in the industry, right?
Yep. Yep. And that's another thing I'm really excited about. While, customer communities, they're great. They definitely serve a purpose. And I think every company should have some form of that. This is going to be a lot more serving an industry like marketing, which there are a few communities, but marketing demand gen folks, I mean, they are really the heart and soul of business, and they need support too. And so it's been really cool to actually build something for kind of a community of folks that don't really have anything right now.
Now, how would a company have a community within their company organization? Tell me how that looks.
Absolutely. So, most organizations ideally have ERGs, employee resource groups. And what I've seen at Clary and at Outreach is that these groups, it's not just a place to get resources, it's not just a place to talk about recent news. New items on the news. Instead, like, it's about relationships. It's people are making new friends that way. They just moved to the city for their job and they don't know anybody, and because that ERG, they're able to build a community of people around them that they can spend time with similar interests, but as well grow together too, which is a really cool thing. So I think that's one of the most simplistic explanations of what an almost internal community can look like.
I love that because you've got this new workforce of this hybrid or remote or, something in between
Mm-hmm.
that you don't have the traditional office space anymore where your
Yep.
community was at the water cooler. And that's why we have a water cooler, right?
Yep.
Or going to lunch with somebody or happy hour afterwards. You don't have those traditional things that used to be. We've grown into something more. So having this approach gives that sense of building those relationships, because when you build those relationships, at least to me, you are building loyalty within your own company.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just like with normal communities, and this is something I've talked about internally at Metadata, is while we're not there to sell, and this is a huge thing at Sales Hacker with outreach supporting us, is we're not there to sell. It's purely to be there, to be supportive, to have a safe space where people can have conversations. But ideally, you need to have some level of a business ROI. So being able to get that brand loyalty. One of my favorite things from Sales Hacker, and I know that this is going to happen hopefully here at Metadata as well, is being able to look back on the relationships I created, but then also seeing folks that I was able to help get a job or help introduce them to a mentor or find a different way to support them on whatever that looked like. And for me, that's like the warm and fuzzies that I love. And that's what drives what I do. But from a business aspect, that person's always going to remember the time that we helped them, whether it was because they were a customer or a prospect or whoever. It was just doing the right thing, and they now have that relationship with the brand. And so that's something that I'm a huge believer of internally as well, is if you're taking care of your employees, if you're supporting them where they ask to be supported, which is a huge thing, not where you necessarily think that they should be, they're going to build that brand loyalty internally to that organization. And you don't want to take advantage of that, of course, but it's
No,
just good to know that for sure.
right. No, and I think it also increases productivity because people are happy,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And I think the beautiful part of that is that, you and I met Girls Club, then we met
Yeah.
Sales Hacker, and then all kinds of different places. And I'm like, I have to have Katie on the show because she's amazing. She is a forward thinker. And really what you're doing is reaching beyond what is possible right now and making it possible for those relationships to come back into the workforce.
Absolutely. A lot of people don't know I started off in sales. And so in the organization I was with, while I had an amazing leader, I ended up being one of the youngest women in North America by 25 years. And it was very difficult. It was very challenging. And almost ironically, the folks who were the most successful, it was because of their relationships.
Yeah.
And some people think of that as like very old school sales, right? The little black book, playing on the golf course. But really, those were relationship building moments for these people. And I remember we had a head of education. We were very verticalized. And he was awesome. And I remember him telling me that he was going to stay at a customer's house because their families had just become so close over the 10 years of a relationship that they had, which is insane. But if you look at that, what some people may consider a very stoic image, and then look at nowadays in communities, that's exactly what we're doing. And so it's kind of funny to see more like old school ideas and how we're reimagining. Yeah, it's really interesting.
But I love what you said, how you're reimagining it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the golf course because there are laws put in
Yeah.
healthcare that I know of that you can't do those kind of things.
Yeah.
Travel agency, you can't take certain trips and all of those things. But now you're reimagining how to build those relationships without all the legalities of what you can and cannot do. And that is the community. And I love that. I was going to ask you a question on when we talk about in sales, it's interesting. What was the one thing that you found by building a relationship that was unique for you?
In sales specifically,
Well, in anything.
well, now I'm thinking about my sales days. I think what's really unique for me is, and I saw this with my customers as well, my prospects, was being able to be comfortable with each other enough to have like very real conversations. And I guess an example, I sold mostly into schools. I sold networks, it's like hardware, router switches, access points, that stuff. And being able to speak with the school and hearing them say, we just don't know if we have the money. We are having to cut teachers, and share these things that can be very scary, can be very vulnerable, and seeing their heart behind it. And same thing with community ed. That's been one of my favorite parts, is just talking with our members and saying, like, how are things actually going? I always giggle, side note, I always giggle because I'll see people on LinkedIn be like, nobody's truly asking, like, hey, how's your weekend, or how are you doing? And honestly, I always feel a little attacked, because I genuinely am like, no, seriously, how are you? Like, how are things going? Are you doing okay?
Mhm.
And so I always giggle at that, because I'm like, man, come on. But that's my favorite part, is getting to know, like, how are people genuinely doing, and having them feel comfortable enough to actually say, like, hey, things are not going well. And knowing that, like, I'm there to support them through that. So
I remember one of my when I was in fire and EMS sales, and as a sales rep, I got to know this customer really well. We would just talk every week, and I got my best chili recipe from him. And that recipe will always remind me of him. And so,
oh
you know, it's just interesting how just those kind of conversations. We found out our both of our daughters were in high school, both in track and field, and it's not about it's not necessarily about all the products we sold, but he became one of our number one customers. But it was more of the connection.
I love that. Yeah, that's exactly. It's that relationship, connection, friendship that comes from it, and the continued support. I think that's another huge thing, is and this is one of the things I love most. Another thing I love most about community is when you kind of have those more transparent conversations, and then you're able to follow up on it. Like, I remember we would run like re-engagement campaigns at Sales Hacker. I mean, it was a community of, I think now, 46,000 members, which is insane. Not all 46,000 are always going to be active. And so being able to see who's not posting near as much as they used to, and then actually messaging them. And so I know I had messaged a few members here and there, and just saying, like, hey, what's going on? And it was so cool. Corey over at Aspireship's a great example. He said, hey, I just haven't been super active. We just had a baby.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I sent him a onesie, and being able to follow up and, like, how's your child? And and it's just so stinking cool. Or someone else, he was over in Europe, and he's like, yeah, I just got laid off. I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, here's resources. And we continued that conversation. And yeah, that's the thing. I mean, just having that relationship, having that, I think, more so respect for each other as well. Um, and I think what's even cooler is all of this can be translated internally as well. And so that's been a huge thing for me as of late, of how do we build those internal communities, and really build those internal relationships. And then, a huge part's just listening to what our employees are actually saying. So
And that's what I was going to ask you in the next question is what are 2 or 3 key things that somebody could do to start building a community within their organization?
yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is actually survey your employees.
Yeah.
We do this in communities. We survey our members. We figure out, are they happy? Are they not happy? What do they like? What do they not like?
Hmm.
Have they found the recent events helpful or valuable for them?
Yeah.
And so I think a huge thing, do that with your employees. Figure out, like, don't just take the words of 2 to 3 different people that you always talk to for everything. Instead, talk to, the other 87% that never respond, and really make that your metric of successes if they all respond, or, whatever. So talk with your employees, actually hear from them. The second thing is, be willing to be flexible. Be flexible, because what you may have planned is not always what they're going to want. This was a hard lesson for me, because I always thought, well, then I must be a failure if I'm having to change things, or maybe I'm not as in tune with what's happening if I'm having to make changes. And instead, I had to shift to, if it's what they're wanting and if it's going to help them, then that should be my number one thing.
Yeah.
And so same thing internally of, hey, sometimes you have to make changes. Maybe you reallocate your budget for lunch gift cards once a week to surprise random people, whatever, right? And so I think that's another big thing, as well as talk with your members and then be willing to make the appropriate changes.
And be flexible. That's great. Yeah, I would say when I first started my business now, Side B, I would go in with, here are some songs. Well, those songs meant something to me. They
Mm,
mean something or they meant
yeah.
else to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Because lyrics and music is so unique that you have to say, okay, I need you to put your AirPods on and find a favorite song that's going to motivate you, not one that I say is going to motivate you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
So
that's great.
it's interesting in that aspect. Um, so how are you doing? How are you doing?
Honestly, it has been so much fun. I couldn't have been happier with this switch. This organization it's amazing, just being around a group of people that are constantly encouraging and challenging you. It's really stinking cool. I mean, it's really a very unique thing, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of it. Little fun fact, I just had my last weekend of my graduate classes. So not this coming weekend, but the following, I'll add 3 little letters next to my name, Little Miss MBA. So
Yay!
I am so thrilled. I've just got 4 quizzes and a 25-page paper that we're only on 18 of right now. So that's
That's
what my evenings are spent doing.
And what is your MBA in? Business?
So yeah, I just did a general business at Texas Tech, and honestly, it's been amazing. And that's been another thing I've seen on LinkedIn. And so just get ready for my little post about it. But everyone's saying, no, you don't need degrees for this, you don't need that, it's a waste of time. Well, honestly, my MBA has been the most valuable degree that I've achieved so far. One, because I never thought I'd get it. I didn't do great in undergrad, and I just never thought that I could be successful. And to have like a 3.7, it's just been amazing for me and to prove to myself. So there's a lot of value in that. But then what I've learned about analytics and statistics and leadership and ethics and organizational behavior, like all these classes, it's been so cool because I've been able to really implement exactly what I'm learning
Yeah.
to what I'm doing, which has been amazing for me. So that's been really cool.
If you want to connect with Katie, I put her LinkedIn on the file, and it looks like Vincent Catanzaro said
Thank you.
he is an amazing person. So I'm glad he was able to comment on that for you. What else? We've got to wrap this up in about 3 minutes. And so and if you'll stay on afterwards, this
Absolutely.
one-on-one chat, I'd welcome that opportunity with you. But, everyone, we are talking with Katie Ray on community and all the things she's doing. Does anyone have any questions for her specifically? Go ahead and put into the chat and we'll tee those up to her. But I love the work that she's doing. I love that she's reimagining those old skills that really brought people together, not only customer and client, but employees and industries together. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about community. And she is a definite professional in this. So, I certainly welcome her being here. And we already got her 2 tips. One is to talk to your employees, and 2, to be flexible, because we're not always going to know what they want. And
Yeah, absolutely.
that's the key there.
I may be a professional in community, but apparently I'm not a technical professional by any means. So lesson learned on that.
That's okay. We got through that, and it was absolutely wonderful. If you could wrap up community in 3 words, what would you wrap that? What would you say is relationships? What else?
Okay, so community, 3 words: relationships, value, maybe educational value, and Maybe, oh, this is so hard because I want to say like safe, because I want it to be a safe area where people, or instead of safe, let's say authentic or genuine or transparent. Pick one of those synonyms. But
Just add
that's what I
toast
said.
at the end.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think you're right. I think it's about relationships. It's also about having a safe place, like you said, a safe place to communicate where you
Yeah.
don't feel judged, where you don't feel, um, that people are looking at you differently.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, I think that's really, important to have a community. And Girls Club was that way, and Sales Hacker, and
Yeah.
AASP, and
Oh,
some of the
yeah.
communities that I was in. And I love the idea that you're bringing it to within the organization.
Absolutely. And I think camaraderie might be a good one because it's bringing people together. And I think with camaraderie, it kind of sums up a lot of those emotions that you feel around community. So I think that might be, I should make like one of those little, I never remember what they're called, but you know, the little graphics where
Well,
it's, well, it has like the words that are bolder. And yeah, I should do one of those. That's a good idea.
and everyone can follow Katie and understand the three things of community, because that's the big takeaway here. Thank you so much, Katie, for being on. Really appreciate you taking your time and working through and struggling through that with me.
No, thank you for your patience, and thank you everyone, and thanks Vincent for your kind words, and Paula, it's just always a pleasure. You are such an absolute rock star, and I just can't wait to see every great thing that you're up to as well. So
That's fantastic. Okay, sit tight for just a moment.
sounds good.
Thank you, everyone. Had a great show today with Katie Ray, head of community at Metadata. Look for her on LinkedIn. She's got so many great ideas. Until next week, keep rocking your talent.